All right, guys, what's up? So today we're gonna the last part of the C33 Painting Contractors California Study Guide. So pretty much, if you guys liked it, go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share it to your friends and family, support the channel through Buy Me a Coffee or a YouTube thanks button, or send some BTC to the wallet listed in the description. So pretty much today we're gonna talk about math, right, and how it pertains to the painting industry. So math is used in the painting industry all the time. Painters use basic math skills daily to estimate materials, cost, and coverage. The most commonly used mathematical concepts include area calculation, so getting a square footage to determine how much paint is needed; unit conversion, so you convert your feet to inches, to gallons, to liters, etc.; your ratios and proportions for mixing paints and thinners; cost estimation, so you calculate your labor, your material costs, your volume and coverage, determine how many gallons of paint are needed; scaling and measuring, when working on blueprints and adjusting for surface dimensions. So I went ahead and put an example of why you're gonna need to know math. It's not complicated, it's not algebra, it's not geometry, it's just basic math, right? Like middle school, high school math. Probably, I'm pretty sure elementary math, if you really think about it. So, right, let's calculate the cost to paint a room, right? And this number is just a number I'm making up. It's just an example, okay? It's not anything like real. Okay, so let's say our room dimensions are a 10 by 10 ceiling. Let's say our walls are a 10 by 10. So we're getting 100 square feet on our ceilings. We're getting 100 square feet per wall. We're getting 4 walls, so that gives us 500 square feet footage of a room. And let's say we're charging $1.50 per square foot. That means that room in total is going to cost us $750 to paint. Okay, now let's say how many gallons we're going to need for that, right? And again, these are just numbers I'm throwing out there. Realistically speaking, a gallon is going to cover like 150, 250 square feet, right? A gallon. I'm just making it up. So, and I'm doing this to kind of make your mind kind of like think a bit. So, gallons needed to paint a room. So let's say a gallon covers 50 square feet, which it doesn't. It covers more. Just going along with it. But let's say we know that a total room the room that we want has a total of 500 square feet. You're going to get your 500 square feet, divide that by 50 square feet. That's going to give you 10 gallons of paint that you're going to need, right? So it's 10 gallons. And and I'll give you guys a little heads up here. Let's say if it would have been 9.8, right? I would always round it up. You always round up when dealing with any, I guess, with any material. All right, painters and construction professionals use standardized measurements to ensure accuracy and estimating materials, surface areas, and project costs. Here are the most commonly used in construction measurements in painting and general construction. Typically, you'd want to know about linear measurements, your length, your width, and your heights. You want to know feet and inches, the imperial system. You want to know meters. Well, don't even think about meters and don't even worry about meters and centimeters. That's not even for us. But you do want to know how to convert, right? So 1 foot. You remember one foot is 12 inches and 1 yard is 3 feet. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys an example. A wall that is 10 feet by 8 feet is written at 10 by 8. Okay, so it's just an example. So area measurements. When we're talking about square footage and square meters used to determine the amount of paint needed. For example, whenever you want to get a square footage, like we did before, you're going to times length times height. And for floors and ceilings, length times width. Okay, so for 1 square foot, so 1 square foot equals 144 square inches because it's 12 by 12 inches. Okay, and that'll equal 1 square foot. 1 square yard is 9 square feet. Okay, remember that. An example would also be like a room with 12 foot by 8 foot walls has 96 square feet per wall. All right, now volume measurements. So this would be cubic feet and cubic meters. This is used for paint volume estimates, concrete, and insulation. So formula for cubic feet, it would be length times width times height. So 1 cubic foot is 1,728 cubic inches. An example of this would be a room is measuring 10 by 10 by 8. That means you have 800 cubic feet of space. Common paint coverage measurements. Pretty much a paint is measured in gallons, right? 1 gallon covers approximately 350 to 400 square feet per coat. 2 coats are typically required for a solid finish. Example of this would be a 300 square foot wall requires 1 gallon of paint per coat. All right. What is a measuring tape and how do you read it? So a measuring tape or tape measure is a flexible ruler used to measure lengths, widths, heights, and depths in feet, inches, centimeters, and millimeters. It is commonly used in construction, painting, carpentry, and DIY projects. Everyone in the construction industry should know how to use a tape, even if you don't use it regularly. So remember, guys, that the first line here is a 0 mark, okay? Then you'd go 16ths, 8ths, halves, well, quarters, 16ths, 8ths, halves. So remember, this would be your 0, your half inch, your 1 inch. Okay, or if you want to go based on whatever this is, this is a 1 inch. Oh, this is your 2 inch. This is your 1.5 inches. This is your 1/4 inches. This is your 1 1/8, 1 1/16. And obviously, you could start getting into your 32s right there for more like really picky stuff. But just remember how to read this. If you're having trouble, go buy a tape measure. Practice it at home. If you want this one, I guess take a screenshot or something and watch this, or go online, go on YouTube. It is how to read the tape measure. I even have one on my YouTube channel too, so if you want to read that or look at that. So fire protection, fire ratings in the painting industry. Fire ratings in the painting industry refer to coating's ability to resist fire, slow flame spread, and reduce smoke production. These ratings are essential for building safety, fire codes, and regulatory compliance. So, fire rating coatings are also known as intumescent paints, fire rated retardant paint, thermally insulating coatings, and pretty much flame spread resistant paint. So, remember, the state isn't going to ask you to know this, but it is going to ask you what is a fire resistant coating, and they might throw a question in there about this, but they're not going to ask you what type, where does it go on, or whatever. They just might ask you for the name of it. So, types of fire extinguishers and their uses. Fire extinguishers are categorized based on the type of fire they are designed to put out. The 5 main classes of fire extinguishers include A, B, C, and D, and K. Each is used for different fire hazards. So this one, they will ask you guys about this, so pay attention to this one. So remember, Class A fire extinguisher is for ordinary combustibles. So your wood, your paper, your cloth, your trash. It's pretty much, it could be from water, foam, or dry chemical. That's what's inside the chemical, the fire extinguisher itself. Class B is for flammable liquids. This will take care of gasoline, oil, or grease, or alcohol or paint fires. This is typically made from foam, CO2, or dry chemicals. If it's a Class C, this would be for electrical. This is for live wires, outlets, appliances. It's typically made from CO2s and dry chemical. If it's a Class D, this is typically meant for combustible metals. So magnesium, lithium, aluminum shavings, typically made from dry powder. Class K is for cooking oils and fats. So kitchens, fires, grease fires, and typically it's a wet chemical that's inside of the fire extinguisher. So, extinguisher type. Remember that water extinguishers cools the fire and removes the heat. Foam extinguishers smothers the fires and prevents reignition. Carbon dioxide or CO2 extinguishers displaces oxygen and cools fire. Dry chemical extinguishers, also known as ABC, interrupt chemical reactions in the fire, and this is also known as multi-purpose. For a wet chemical extinguisher, it cools and forms a barrier to prevent reignition. For dry powder extinguishers, it smothers metal fires. So fire prevention in the construction in construction and painting is crucial to the presence of flammable materials and chemicals and electrical hazards. Implementing proper safety measures can help prevent accidents, protect lives and property. Proper storage and handling of flammable materials. So for storing paints, solvents and chemicals, you should do it in fireproof cabinets. Keep flammable materials, paint thinners, adhesives, lacquers in approved ventilated fire rated storage. Use properly sealed containers to prevent vapors from igniting. Keep storage areas well ventilated. Reduce buildup of flame fumes. Label and organize chemicals. Avoid accidental mixing of reactive substances. An example of this would be keep rags soaked with paint thinner in a fire-resistant metal container with a lid to prevent spontaneous combustion. So remember that anything that's oil-based is pretty much it's like a fire hazard. A lot of this stuff can spontaneous combust, so always have it on lock. So fire safe workplace practices: control ignition sources, do not smoke or weld, or use open flame near flammable materials. Use ground equipment. Prevent electrical sparks from igniting fumes. Turn off electrical equipment when not in use. This will reduce fire risk from overheating. Follow proper paint spraying procedures. Use explosion fire proof spray boots or well ventilated areas to prevent airborne flammable vapors. And never overload chemical circuits. So you reduce that will reduce the risk of short circuits. Example of this would be use spark proof electrical tools, ventilation systems when painting with solvent based coatings. The proper use of fire extinguishers and fire suppression systems. Place fire extinguishers near work areas. Ensure Class A, Class B, and C extinguishers are readily available. Train workers on how to use fire extinguishers. Employees should know the pass method. So that'd be pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Install automatic fire suppression systems. Use sprinklers, fire alarms in high risk areas. Ensure clear access to fire exits. Mark and maintain emergency escape routes. Remember, in construction, a site should have fire extinguishers every 75 feet and trained workers available at all times. Fire resistant building materials and coatings. Use fire retardant paints, coatings. This will help slow flame spread on wood, steel, and drywall. Apply incandescent coatings on steel structures. This will expand when heated and provide insulation against fires. Use fire-resistant insulation in drywall. This will reduce the risk of fire spreading. An example of this would be applying incandescent paint on pipe beams, on steel beams. Pretty much can increase fire resistance by up to 2 hours, giving occupants more time to evacuate. Safe storage and disposal of materials. Dispose of any oily rags or paint waste properly. Store in fire-resistant self-closing materials. Empty trash bins regularly. Reduce combustible materials buildup. Never leave paint cans open. Prevent fumes from igniting. An example is to use metal containers with tight-fitting lids for disposing of paint rags and solvent materials. Fire safety training and emergency planning. Conduct regular fire drills, training, ensure all workers know emergency procedures, and assign fire safety officers on site responsible for fire prevention monitoring. Have an evacuation plan in place, clearly marked exit routes and fire assembly points. An example of this would be every construction site should have a fire response plan posted in key locations. The safe use of heating and electrical equipment. Inspect electrical tools and wiring regularly. Look for flayed wires or overheating. Keep heaters away from flammable materials. Maintain a safe 3-foot clearance around heaters. Use only approved extension cords. Avoid overloading circuits. And pretty much turn off equipment at the end of each workday. This will prevent overheating and hot and short circuits. Example of this will always be use grounded and explosion-proof lighting in paint storage areas to prevent sparks. All right, scaffolding. So in the painting industry, various types of scaffoldings are utilized to provide safe and efficient access to elevated work areas. Each type of scaffold is selected based on the specific requirement of the project, such as height, surface, and mobility needs. Common types of scaffolding used in painting would be supported platform scaffolding. This is the most prevalent type, consistent of elevated platform supported by rigid framework of metal tubes or poles. It is ideal for both interior and exterior painting projects, offering stability and ample workplace. Mobile scaffolding equipped with wheels or casters. Mobile scaffolding allow painters to move the structure easily along the surface like walls. This mobility is particularly beneficial for large-scale projects requiring the frequent repositioning. Trestle scaffolding. This comprises of a setup of plank placed over an A-frame trestle. This type of scaffolding is recommended for indoor use at heights of up to 5 meters. It is commonly used for painting interior walls and ceilings. Suspended platforms. Scaffold. Platforms are suspended from the roof or an overhead structure using rope or chains. This type is suitable for painting tall buildings or structures where ground-based scaffolding isn't feasible. Frame scaffolding, constructed using prefabricated frames. This scaffold is easy to disassemble, making it a popular choice for various painting projects. Safety regulations for scaffolding in California. In California, scaffolding safety is governed by the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health, OSHA. Key regulations include provisions of scaffolding. Scaffolding must be provided for all work that cannot be safely performed by employees standing permanent or solid construction at least 20 inches wide. Exceptions are made for work of a limited nature and short duration under specific conditions. Design and construction. Scaffolds should be constructed of wood or other suitable materials like steel or aluminum with a known strength characteristics. They must provide a degree of strength, rigidity, and safety equivalent to the described scaffold they replace. Load capacity. Each scaffold must be designated to support its own weight and at least 4 times the maximum intended load. Supervision. The erection and dismantle of a scaffold must be supervised by a qualified person, ensuring the compliance and design standard, engineer specifications, or manufacturer's instructions. Permits. A Cal OSHA permit is required for erecting or dismantling scaffolds that exceed 3 stories or 36 feet in height. Training. Employees working on scaffolds must be trained to recognize hazards associated with the use and understand the procedures to control or minimize these hazards. Asbestos. In California, strict regulations govern the handling of asbestos and lead during painting and renovation projects to protect both workers and occupants from health hazards. Asbestos regulations. Asbestos, commonly found in older homes and older materials, possesses health risks when disturbed. California's Division of Occupational and Health, OSHA, enforces comprehensive standards for asbestos-related work. Scope of the regulations. OSHA asbestos standards applies to all construction activities involving asbestos exposure and including demolition, renovation, and maintenance of structures containing asbestos. Work classifications. The regulation categorizes asbestos work into classes with specific requirements for each. Class 1 involves the removal of thermal system insulation and sprayed on or troweled on surface asbestos containing materials. Class 2 pertains to the removal of or other asbestos containing materials such as wallboard, floor tiles, and flooring materials. Class 3 covers repairs and maintenance operations where asbestos containing materials may be disturbed. Training and certification. Workers must receive appropriate training based on the class of the work they perform. For extensive projects, a certified asbestos consultant may be required to assess and oversee the work. Safety measures. Employers are mandated to implement engineering controls, work practices, and personal protective equipment to minimize asbestos exposure. Prohibitive practices include the use of high-speed abrasive disc saws without proper ventilation and the application of compressed air for asbestos removal without appropriate containment. So, in California, stringent regulations govern permissible exposure limits, also known as PELs, for hazardous substances like asbestos and lead to protect workers' health. Asbestos exposure limits. So permissible exposure limits. Workers' exposure to airborne asbestos fibers must not exceed 0.1 fibers per cubic centimeters of air. This is averaged over an 8-hour workday. Excursion limit. This is exposure should not surpass 1.0 fibers per cubic centimeter over a 30-minute period. Lead regulations. So lead-based paint prevalent in structures built before 1978 is another significant concern during painting and renovation. Disclosure requirements. Property owners must inform tenants and buyers of the presence of lead-based paint and associated hazards. Renovation, repair, and painting rule. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, mandates that the firms performing renovation, repair, and painting projects in pre-1978 homes and child-occupied facilities be certified and follow lead-safe practices. This includes containing the work area, minimizing dust, and thorough cleanup. Disposal of lead-based paint debris in the California Environmental Protection Agency requires that the presumed lead-based paint chips and dust must be disposed of as a hazard waste. Proper collection, storage, and disposal practices must be followed to prevent environmental contamination. The lead exposure limits are as follows. Recent updates have significantly tightened lead exposure standards in California. So permissible exposure limits is PL reduced from 50 micrograms per cubic meter to 10 micrograms per cubic meter, calculated as an 8-hour time weighted average. So as of now, it has been reduced from 50 micrograms to 10 micrograms. So they're getting tighter on the lead. So now remember, it's no longer going to be 50, it's going to be 10 micrograms. That the exposure limit that you can be around for an 8-hour workday. Action level lowered from 30 micrograms per cubic meter to 2 micrograms to cubic meter, also averaged over an 8-hour workday. However, significant changes are forthcoming. Effective January 1st, 2025, Cal OSHA will implement stricter standards, lowering the PEL from 10 micrograms, the PEL to 10 micrograms per cubic meter, and action level to 2 micrograms per cubic meter. What is PPE in construction and how is it used? So personal protective equipment in construction refers to specialized clothing and gear designed to help protect workers from hazards such as falling objects, chemicals, electrical exposure, and physical injuries. PPE is required by the Cal OSHA, so Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and state regulations including Cal OSHA in California. PPE. Types of PPE in construction and their uses. So PPE in construction is categorized in different types based on the hazards they protect against. So you got your your head protection, hard hats. The purpose of this is to prevent head injuries from falling objects, debris, and impacts. How is it used? It must be worn at all times on active construction sites. Should be inspected for cracks or dents before use. Different classes offer electrical resistance by added protection. You have Class A, Class B, and Class C. They're not really going to go into any of this besides just how do you protect your head. Eye and face protection. The purpose of this is to shield face and your eyes from dust, flying debris, and chemicals and sparks. How is it used? It must fit snugly and be impact resistant. Used in grinding, welding, and cutting and handling chemicals. And different types of goggles and face shields and face glasses are used based on the task, right? If you're going to remember, safety glasses is pretty much for dust and debris. Goggles is pretty much to protect against fumes, liquids, and fine particles. And shields is used for welding, cutting, and grinding. And welding helmets is to protect from intense light, sparks, and radiation. Hearing protection. Purpose of this would be to prevent from hearing loss from high noise environments above 85 decibels. How is it used? It's required when using loud machinery like jackhammers, saws, and drills. Different noise reduction ratings indicate the level of protection. Remember, earplugs, it can be foam or silicone. It's disposable, compact for general noise reduction. Earmuffs reusable, provides higher noise reduction for loud environments. And canal caps are lightweight, used for intermittently for moderate noise protection. Respiratory protection. This would be protects against dust, fumes, toxic vapors, harmful airborne particles. It's typically used by making sure it's fitted properly to create a tight seal. Required when working with asbestos, lead, and pretty much silica, and dust and chemical vapors. You want to go ahead and use a N95 mask for pretty much all the time for dust and mold and fine particles. You want to use a half-face respirator with filter used for painting and sanding and chemical handling. You want to use a full-face respirator when this provides full-face protection from toxic fumes and heavy dust. Supplied air respirators used in hazard gas environments like confined spaces. For gloves, the purpose is to prevent cuts, burns, abrasions, and chemical exposure. And typically used from different gloves protecting against specific hazards. And again, they must fit securely to allow dexterity while providing protection. Remember, leather gloves are for cuts and abrasions and splinters. Cut resistance is obviously for sharp objects and metal working. Chemical resistant gloves like nitrile and neoprene protect against paints, solvents, and acids. Insulated gloves against electrical protection, and welding gloves protect against heat resistance, protects against sparks and molten metal. Foot protection, so work boots, prevents injuries from crushing, punctures, slips, and electrical hazards. Must be NSI approved with steel or composite toe caps. Split resistant sole and slip resistant soles prevent falls on wet or uneven surfaces. Insulated boots protects against extreme cold or electrical hazards. So pretty much, again, guys, steel toe boots are protection against falling objects. Composite is for lightweight, non-metal, and protects from electrical hazards. But they do the same thing as a steel toe. Same rating, same everything. It's just non-metallic. So it's better for people working in the electrical field. Rubber boots are waterproof, used for wet or chemical heavy areas. Puncture resistant boots protect against nails, glass, sharp debris. Remember, the steel toe boots are not, they're meant for your protection, but there's one thing that people don't seem to understand too when you're dealing with that. Composite as well. While they aren't meant to protect your foot, obviously if something that's super heavy is like gonna fall on your foot, it doesn't matter what you do, it's gonna pretty much go on your foot and it's gonna destroy it. So what does a steel toe or the composite toe do? It gives you an even cut. So that means your cut ends up cutting off all your toes, but that way they don't have to cut off your whole foot. So, it's one of those things. I don't know if you guys knew that. Fall protection equipment. This prevents falls from heights above 6 feet. So any height above 6 feet, you need fall protection. So how is it used? It's required when working on scaffoldings, roofs, ladders, and elevator platforms. Must be secured to an anchor point capable of holding 5,000 pounds. You can use all this by having a full body harness, a lanyard that absorbs the shock of obviously you falling, a self-retracting lifeline. So this is like one that kind of like the closer you move to the point in which you are tied up to, it'll follow you. And you got your anchor point and safety rails if you're working on like scaffolding. Okay, in California, we're going to talk about restrooms now. In California, employers are required to provide and maintain adequate restrooms and potable water facilities for employees, ensuring accessibility, cleanliness, and compliance with specific regulations. So, restroom facilities, accessibility. Employers must provide readily available toilet facilities for employees. These facilities should be within 200 feet of work areas and not more than one floor to floor flights of stairs away where practical. So if you ever notice these big construction sites where they got bathrooms on top, that's why, because it's not supposed to be to where like you got to walk a whole block to take a number 2 or number 1. It's supposed to be readily available. For maintenance, toilets must be clean, maintained, and in good working order, and be accessible to employees at all times. So, even if you don't have like a job site that's gonna last, let's say, a whole month or 2 months or whatever, you need to provide a restroom. It could be the owner's restroom, right? You maybe have it in the contract, and if they don't want to have a restroom, hey, make them pay up. They don't want you using theirs. So the number of toilets. The required number of toilets is based on the number of employees for each sex present at the work site. When toilets are used by men, urinals may be provided instead of toilets, but the number of toilets must not be reduced to less than 2/3 of the minimum specified. So pretty much. So if you have multiple, for example, let's say the job site is all men. You can have a bunch of urinals, but you gotta have at the minimum the toilets mentioned here. So if you got 1 to 15 employees, you gotta have at least 1 toilet. Okay, and that's to going number 2. Now you could have like 20 urinals, which it wouldn't be a bad thing, honestly, because it's I'm tired of going into these restrooms, man, when they're like just covered in so much poop. And obviously you go from there. Just remember, they're not really going to test you on every single one of these. It's just the first one. So 1 to 15 employees, at the minimum, it's 1 toilet. All right. Now, if they ask you about urinals, you can have as many urinals as you want, but there needs to be at least one toilet if based on the number of employees. Okay. For water, so potable water. Provisions. Employers must provide an adequate supply of potable water. That means it's safe to drink water in all spaces of employment. Accessibility. Employees should have access to potable water that is fresh, pure, suitably cool, and provided free of charge. The water should be located as close as practical to the area where the employees are working. Dispensing. The drinking water must be dispensed from a fountain or covered container with single-use drinking cups stored in a sanitary receptacle. And the use of shared cups and drinking in dippers and water bottles is prohibited. All right, so don't, God, like, you don't even know how many people have actually seen this. Provide water to your employees. All right, God, like, I don't even understand why this is even an issue, or restrooms for that matter. All right, additional training. In my opinion, all contractors should get their OSHA 10 and OSHA 30. This will help every new contractor understand basic safety measures needed to work safely in the construction industry. OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 are occupational safety and health administration OSHA training programs designed to educate workers and supervisors on workplace safety hazards and best practices. They are often required in construction, general industry, and other hazardous work environments. If you've ever been in a union or have worked in a very strict construction environment, you will know that all of them require OSHA 10, no matter what, for all entry employees or for all journeymen. If you move up to foreman, they will ask you to now get an OSHA 30. So OSHA 10 is for entry-level workers and general laborers. It will give you the basic info on safety and health hazards. And OSHA 30 is a 30-hour course. It's meant for supervisors, safety coordinators, managers. It will give you in-depth training, focus on hazard identification and prevention, and worker rights. So if you're a contractor, for example, you're looking at these videos, go get your OSHA 10. and go get your OSHA 30. You could do it online. You could do it in your own home on your computer. I don't provide that because you got to get certified. So there's no point in me even doing that. But you could search it up online. I've made videos on how to get an OSHA 10, how to apply for one, and how to get it. Okay. So, what does OSHA 10 consist of? The purpose is it provides basic awareness, training for workers on recognizing and avoiding hazards. It's best for entry-level workers in construction, manufacturing, and general industry. The training topics include introduction to OSHA, fall protection, safety, electrical safety, personal protective equipment, hazard communication, material handling, fire prevention, and emergency response. OSHA 10 is typically required for construction workers, warehouse, factory employees, painters, electricians, plumbers, general laborers in hazardous environments, etc. What does OSHA 30 consist of? Well, the purpose is to provide supervisors and managers with advanced training in workplace safety, hazard recognition, and compliance. This would be best for foremen, supervisors, safety coordinators, and site managers. Pretty much the topics include everything that OSHA 10 does, but it'll go into more detail on how you can manage employees and workers. So pretty much it will go into more detailed information for fall protection, scaffolding and trench safety, lockout, tagout, confined spaces, health hazards, welding and cutting and safety, workplace violation and stress management, record keeping and reporting requirements. OSHA 30 is typically required for construction supervisors, safety managers, coordinators, foremen, project managers, industrial and general industry supervisors. So that's pretty much it, guys. So I hope you guys liked it. I know it seems like it's pretty much not that much information, but honestly, that's what it is. That's what it is. I'm serious. The test is not hard. If you know your job, and obviously you should, right? Because if you're applying for your license, that means you know your job, right? From in and out. So, yeah, it's not that hard. Go and apply. Apart from studying my videos, go get your OSHA 10, go get your OSHA 30. This will kind of bring you up to date on all the safety measures that California has. And not just that, man. Like, if you're an employee right now, let's say you want to join a union for whatever reason, right? Because that's what I would do. Like, if I would have known about unions when I first got out of high school, that'd be the first thing I would have done. First thing, dude. I would have got my OSHA 10. OSHA 30, figure out what I need to do, and join it. And if I wanted to go out on my own, I'd do it. But man, I went non-union, and dude, it's some hard pro being non-union. But pretty much, guys, I hope that's it. Hope you guys liked it, and subscribe, give me a like, and donate and support the channel if you want. I'd really appreciate it. Not that many people do. So the people that do support it, I realistically, I thank you guys a lot. All right, man. See you guys later. I hope you guys liked it.